Okay, given that we're only going till 6 o'clock, I'd like to get started right away. My name is Alan Carlson. I'm an associate professor in the government department, and it is my pleasure this evening to welcome LobsangSangay, LobsangSangay, welcome him to Cornell. Yeah, there's seats down in front still if people would like to. And more formally, in Tibetan, I wrote this down to make sure I don't screw up the pronunciation. So, Sikung Sarpa, LobsangSangay La, Cornell Dharmshala, So, former Sikung of the Tibetan government in exile, LobsangSangay, welcome to Cornell. I'd also like to thank the CAPS program, the East Asia program, and the government department for sponsoring today's talk. And in addition, I'd like to thank Geshe Tenzin Chosan La, who is here in front, who is the head of the Namgyal Monastery here in Ithaca, who hosted a wonderful talk by Lobsang La last night. And with the local Tibetan community, that talk was in Tibetan. I understood maybe half of what was being said. Today's talk will be in English, so hopefully that will work for most of you. LobsangSangay is a senior visiting fellow at the East Asian Legal Studies program at Harvard Law School. He was a democratically elected Sikong or president of, and should I say Central Tibetan Administration? Yes, Tibetan government in exile, and served 2 terms. This is from 2011 to 2021. Lobsang La completed his BA and LLB from Delhi University. He did his LLM, which I'm not even sure what exactly stands for, but it's something to do with law. Master's in law. Okay, and his JD. I know what a JD is. I am a faculty member here, so I have some limited amount of wisdom from Harvard Law School in 2004. He's published too many academic articles to mention, and is a frequent contributor to major American media outlets, and recently wrote an outstanding essay in Foreign Affairs. I think it's called "The Struggle for the Soul of the Dalai Lama."
That's the topic they gave.
They gave you that topic. Okay, it's still a pretty wonderful title. He's been awarded the Gold Medal for outstanding contribution to public discourse from Trinity College in Dublin, a whole host of other awards as well. It's quite clear that while he was in office, he did not come to Ithaca, and this maybe his visit has been long awaited by the local Tibetan community.
20 years.
It's wonderful that he's joining us here today. He's going to talk for about 15 to 20 minutes. We're going to have a kind of a Q&A between he and I, a discussion for about 20 minutes, mostly because I have a lot of questions that I want to ask, and I'm going to take advantage of sponsoring his visit. But I think they'll also open up the floor to other issues, and then we'll still have about 20 minutes at the end for questions from the audience. So all that being said, let's please give LobsangSangay a warm welcome to Cornell and Ithaca.
Oh. Actually, the real person is here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan La. So he calls me Lobsang La, means out of civility and respect. When you add La, means you're respecting someone. So he calls me La, and I have to reciprocate it and say Alan La.
You have to.
Yes, I must.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for hosting me, and the programs for hosting me, and Brian for being such an efficient coordinator who, he's a multitasker. He did everything possible. So if Cornell have a staff like him, then I think you can run your program very well. And today being Wednesday evening, turnout is good. And here is this maximum capacity 36. I think it has crossed way above that. So that's good. Thanks for coming. Now, I was told that Cornell won't be hockey against Harvard. Is that you?
Did we beat Harvard? No,
I assume you
did. We won.
Okay. Now I was asked to talk about few small issues, right? The view from Dharmshala himself talk of Tibet, China, and the world, and my 10 years of my service in 15 minutes. So Alan has been very generous to give me 5 minutes for 3 different countries of world, right? There are 200 countries. And in 10 years of my service, I get to spend 1 minute per year. So I'll give you the espresso version of my experience. First, I think maybe just to set context, right? I'm a believer of dialogue. So when I was at Harvard, I organized track 3 diplomacy between Chinese and Tibetan scholars, So 8 rounds, including one with His Holiness Dalai Lama and 25 Chinese students and scholars from mainland China. And we used to have serious conferences where, high-level Chinese officials, including Vice Minister of the United Front, the President of Tibet University, Head of Anthropology Department of Beijing University, and so on and so forth, used to come every year. So I used to organize that, and I used to also organize a students-to-students dialogue between Chinese and Tibetan students as well. So I'm a believer in dialogue. I did all that when this is in early 2000s, right? So a lot of Tibetans were worried, how come you're talking to Chinese? Aren't they from the other side? Can you talk to them? Do you trust them? Can you put Chinese scholars and students in one room with His Holiness Dalai Lama? I kind of took a risk. and all that took place. Having said that, Chinese government officials and scholars who used to come to my conference used to always say, Lobsang, you have never been to Tibet. What you're saying is absolutely wrong. You should come to Tibet and see for yourself, then you will change your mind. And I said, finally, okay, I'm coming. So I went in 2006 to Beijing. And then I made a request. I said, I want to go to Lhasa now, and the official said, well, we don't have enough people to receive you in Lhasa. I said, you have 1.4 billion people. You have 90 million Communist Party members. You have enough people. Anyway, I don't need any reception. It's just 3 hours flight. Can I go? He said, no. And then I have a very personal reason why, because the previous year my father had passed away. So it was his death anniversary. And as a Tibetan, as a Buddhist, you want to light one candle in the holy, first of all, city of Tibet, Lhasa, and especially Chokang or Potala Palace. That's what you want, to pray for your late father. Give the same answer. Sorry, we don't have enough people to receive you Lhasa. I was like, wow, this is what I'm dealing with. For all these years, they told me, you believe in dialogue, we come to your conference, why don't you come to Tibet to see for yourself? And I'm right there in Beijing, and I was not allowed. So I had a bit of a doubt as to where this dialogue is going to go, even though, I believe in dialogue. And then I continued to organize conferences from 2007, 2008, still. But then my belief was waning a bit based on my personal experience. If they don't allow a personal visit of I was also at that time researcher, a senior fellow, no political responsibility at all. They didn't allow me. Now, then I got elected in 2011. The day my result was announced, I was labeled, quote unquote, terrorist. I mean, associated with the terrorist organization, Tibet Youth Congress. I was like, wow, to come to my conference, I hosted you guys. How can you label me, this way? Of course, it didn't fly because, I have fully credentials and all that, so no one bought it. But the People's Daily, that was, I was like, oh, this is tough, But then I got elected in 2011, and then if I have to divide the time, from 2011, I got re-elected in 2016, and then till 2021, right? So from 2011 to 2017, inside Tibet, there were self-immolations. Literally, Tibetans were burning themselves and dying. Altogether, 157 happened, except for one last year, 155, and one in 2009. 155 took place when I was Sikh. Like, can you imagine? Every morning you get up, you get to see these 45-year-old men and women and monks and nuns and nomads and farmers burning themselves and crying, and they're praying that His Holiness should live long and he should return to Tibet and freedom for Tibet. That was essentially their aspirations, their slogans, right? And then, so it's very painful for me, very painful. There's a long story as to, okay, from leadership point of view, obviously Tibetans were emotionally, carried away. And then you actually want to show solidarity. So there's protests and rallies and candlelight vigil almost every day. And I was under pressure to join them. Now, as a politician, you should, where the majority is, you should go with them because that's where the vote is. But as a human being, as a leader, I asked myself, can I say, yes, you should continue to burn yourself? Deep inside me, I just could not come to terms with that, right? Then as a leader now, you must speak your mind. Now, if I say, do it, it's easy, I'm in the majority. Tibetans around the world will say, yes, he's with us. If I say, don't do it, I get criticized. I might lose votes. Then as a human being, I have to dig deep down. And then in April 2012, I came out and said, as a human being, life is precious. We should live and continue to struggle for a cause. Please don't, commit self-immolation. You should save your life. As a Buddhist, anyone who dies, I'll pray for you. So I shut down my office because sometimes in a week, there will be like 14 a week, So I shut down my office and go and pray for those who die. And then as a Tibetan, I said, I understand your aspirations. I will magnify, I will reflect your aspirations. But essentially what I said is, I support your aspirations, but not your action. So don't commit self. So I came under a lot of criticisms from many reporters. They say, who the hell are you? They're burning themselves voluntarily for a cause. Least you could do is at least show solidarity, if not praise them, at least support the act, Then as a human being, I just could not, right? Having said that, now this is the, dynamic within the Tibetan community. Then I come to Washington, D.C. I go to Brussels, and then I say, oh, look, Tibetans are burning themselves. This is urgent, you better come and support us, right? Now, over 10 years, U.S. Congress was very sympathetic. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and they were very sympathetic. But then the White House State Department didn't even allow me to enter the State Department or the White House for 10 years. Can you imagine now? Tibetans are burning inside. And here I am, I'm facing a very challenging environment in the Tibetan community because I'm taking a minority view. But at the same time, I must report the pain and the sufferings of Tibetans inside Tibet. And the State Department says, you are a Prime Minister of Tibetan government exile. We don't entertain government exiles. You can't enter the State Department. Come meet with us in a cafeteria, Starbucks, some basement, because someone will see us take a photograph, And somebody was so noisy that you barely hear each other. And I was like, I'm coming here and said 47 Tibetans burned this year. I'm reporting you barely hear each other, So you go through that challenge because from 2011 to 2017, whole world wanted to engage with China, make business with China. We can change China. We can make them moderate. We can democratize them. We can bring to our fold, right? We give them technology. We give them money. We give them FDI. We give them anything they want. They'll come halfway and they become like us. And then we say, hey, I don't see it that way. They say, you're a victim. You're a minority. Your voice don't count. You're emotional. We know what we're doing. We are America. We are European Union. We have dealt with the world for centuries. We know what we're doing. And no matter how many times I try to convey, hey, I'm a believer of dialogue. I engage in dialogue. I was not even allowed to go to Tibet as in my personal capacity, just for a visit. This is what we are dealing with. They didn't listen. And then in 2012, Chinese government issued a very sophisticated ID card to Tibetans. Right? Now, when you have a sophisticated ID card, normally it means from development point of view, it's progress. But I said, this is surveillance. This is the control of movement. This is the report. And I come and say, hey, look, this is the surveillance system that's coming. When such a sophisticated ID is issued to illiterate Tibetan farmers and nomads in remote villages, they don't need ID. In their whole life, they will never travel from that nomadic or a farming place. When they issue, this is surveillance, this is dangerous. Right? They say, no, you have no idea. This is what they call, anecdotal issues you're talking about. We need concrete empirical data. How can I get empirical data when no one is allowed to go inside Tibet and investigate, right? And then the Belt and Road Initiative was launched by Xi Jinping in 2013, in Kazakhstan. Everybody's like, wow, maybe we can partner, maybe we can invest it, right? And I say, hey, as far as Tibetans are concerned, Chinese government promised us one road connecting China to Tibet. And our parents welcomed them. Road means progress, development. We welcomed them. Once the road was completed, tanks came, trucks came, guns came, then took over our country. And afterward, that one road has become 100 roads going to all our mining places, minerals. Even now, one airport has become like six airports and 30 airports, all near our mines, our natural resources. So this is what happened. No, you have no idea what you're talking about. We have how many staff here? As a victim, you go with your intuition. You go with your feeling. And then no one wanted to talk to you or meet with you, take it seriously until 2017. After 2017, there's a bit of a growing realization. Oh, Xi Jinping, no matter what we do, no matter President Obama had his, shirt, in Southern California, has a 1 or 3 hours meeting with their, with the shirts and all that, and then President Biden met him 3 times and I looked into his eyes. We kind of convinced him. They all went through that. And in 2007, there was a turning point. It's like, wow, no matter what we do, what we say, no one is listening. And then after when I came to DC, there was a bit of attraction. Hey, Lobsang, we want to know, what you're saying, but still not allowed to enter the State Department White House. Then pandemic, that hit. And then the whole world was shut down. Right? And then the first dramatic, the lesson learned, the whole world is like, whoa, this is serious, When did the COVID origin? Not blaming anyone. Let scientists investigate, right? That was not allowed. Data was not allowed, all that, right? Then the whole world realized, oh, we are dealing with something different. So that's my journey. Tibet, very serious. You try to report, what's going on inside China to the rest of the world. Very tough. And then finally, in 2020, during pandemic, when America was #1, infections and death, India was #2. I had to come and lobby the Congress to pass a law called Tibet Policy and Support Act. So essentially, I used to, emotionally blackmail the staff members. They're all scared. They're all working from the home. I just called media, I just emailed them, say, I'm coming to DC. No, so why are you coming to DC? We all are in our offices. We are not going to meet with you anyways. No, I'm risking my life to come to DC to tell you, you better pass this law. And it's a long story, but finally we managed to pass the law. Tibetan Policy Support Act 2020. Now it's law in America to support Tibet. Right? And then I managed to enter the State Department October 2020, and the White House in November 2020, December, I think. Yeah. So again, there are potential leaders, a lot of students here. Persistence is key. You should not give up. So I used to go to Washington, D.C. 3 or 4 times a year. So if you're rejected 30 or 40 times, what would you do? Your generation. After maybe 3 times, you might give up, right? But as a Tibetan, as someone who's elected, whether it was pandemic or not, you have to keep pushing yourself, keep, challenging yourself. And finally, even Washington, D.C., they do change to an extent. And then the Brussels also changes a bit. And then Tokyo, other countries also change a bit. So essentially, that's my journey in how many minutes did I say?
Take your time.
Is that so?
I will see whatever. Do what you want to do.
Really?
I mean, not free rate, but
oh, I thought you all brought your blankets and pillows and things like that, and I can go on for another 2 hours.
Take your time.
That's essentially. I don't want to. But then Tibetan government exile. By the way, it is a serious government. Okay, it's a functioning there, as you might know. In 2004, there used to be 20 million refugees, if I'm not wrong. Now it's 150 altogether million refugees. That is an exponential increase. Among all the refugee communities and exile communities, Tibetan government exile is the only functioning government exile which delivers. So we have our own cabinet, we have our own ministries, right? Finance ministry collects funding, and then international relations office. We have offices of Tibet or embassies, Washington D.C. to Moscow, in South Africa, to Taiwan, Japan, Delhi, Kathmandu, Brussels, you just name it. So it's a functioning government. And then our literacy rate is around 93 or 94%. If there's someone from India, and literacy rate in India is 83, 84%, right? So Tibetan government, India is our host. India supports us, in fact, funds our education system. But our literacy rate is higher, not just India and some of the countries in South Asia as well. So in that sense, this is a labor of love. And lastly, so I got my degrees at Harvard and got a job at Harvard. Then I got elected in 2011. I left my job, went to Dharmshala for $375 a month. Okay, so I have a title of Prime Minister or President, but my salary was less than a per diem of a senior staff member. And then I used to fly around. I used to travel around almost 60% of the time. I traveled really a lot, economy class. So it was a labor of love. So if you want to join Tibetan government exile, let me know. I'll pass on your resume. But you'll get only $375 a month. You better prepare for that, right? So again, this is how we run our government in exile. Frugally, effectively, this was the vision of His Holiness Dalai Lama. Under his guidance, we have managed to establish a very successful Tibetan government exile. So maybe I'll end here, and then obviously I'll come to you if you're interested. I have traveled to many universities. I have faced protests. Even at University of Toronto by Chinese students and scholars, waving Chinese flag and singing national anthem and all that, right? So if there's a protest at Cornell, I'm used to it. Okay, so you're welcome to do so. So with that, thank you very much, Alan.
Wonderful. I think I'll ask 2 questions, turning us to kind of China and the world. It's amazing to hear about your experiences leading the government in exile and the challenges that you faced. And as we talked about earlier today, I think I began to study China because I thought I needed to understand Tibet. And your argument is for us to understand where the world is headed, we need to understand Tibet rather than understand China.
I often say this, if you really want to understand China, how it functions, you must understand Tibet. If you don't understand Tibet, you won't understand China. So that's why it took 7 years to convince Washington DC and other places.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of us who maybe fall into that category. I have 2 questions, one that's specific to, both of which come out of actually your foreign affairs piece. One that relates specifically to the question of reincarnation and the selection and recognition of reincarnate lamas, specifically with reference to His Holiness's lineage. The Dalai Lama is 88 this year. He has spoken about living to be 113. And if anyone can live that long, I think His Holiness is probably the person who can do it. That being said, as you noted in the foreign affairs piece, China's position on the selection and recognition of reincarnates, particularly his lineage, is very clear. They believe it's their prerogative under their authority. You make it clear that you do not accept that position at all, and that's obviously the position of the vast majority of the Tibetan people. I'm curious then, though, both kind of within the Tibetan community, both the lay community and the monastic community, to what extent do you think there may be some room for innovative or creative approaches to considering what the lineage will look like in the future? How much space there is and room there is for variation from the established traditions? And alongside of that, I think the answer is going to be no to the second question, but do you think there's any space for maybe an agreeing to disagree between Dharmshala and Beijing? There have been a few, granted mostly in the 1990s, cases in which there was at least not cooperation, but tolerance on the 2 sides. It seems to me this is probably going to be the most important, not just religious and cultural issue facing the Tibetan people in the years to come, but also probably the most important political one too. So I'd love to hear your views on where that stands and what's likely to unfold.
Yeah, if I may answer the second question first, just in the short, then I'll come to the foreign affairs piece on reincarnation. On cooperation between Beijing and Dharmshala, as for the reincarnation of the yes, if Beijing agrees to our candidate, yes. So Beijing will say you should agree to our candidate, right? So it boils down to, on the one hand, it's not a complicated issue. It's when you talk reincarnation, it's esoteric, and Tulku system. What is this Buddhist issue? Essentially, what His Holiness and Tibet is saying is, it is His Holiness Dalai Lama's reincarnation. It's his right, it's his choice. Don't you think? He should have the right to decide where he wants to come, when he wants to come. Don't you think so? It's his rights, right? But Beijing is saying, no, 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 I have the right over you, right? So I say, why? You know, it's just a spiritual matter. It's a personal matter, choice on the part of the foreigners. So the question is, does His Holiness the Dalai Lama has right to decide his reincarnation? Absolutely. Spiritually speaking, he decided to come as reincarnation. He decided. He's okay, the first Dalai Lama, second Dalai Lama. No one, there was no Chinese government, not even a Chinese guy next to him. First and second Dalai Lama. He decided to come. He decided, okay, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Right? And the second reason why reincarnation come is the followers. They like the teacher. And they say, we want the teacher to come back and teach us, continue to teach us and guide us and give us wisdom and give us enlightenment. It's the followers. So the first Dalai Lama, second and third Dalai Lama, Tibetan followers kept saying, please come back. We want you to come back. So the role is between teacher and student. Third Dalai Lama went to Mongolia, spent many years, and he died in Mongolia. Many Mongolians felt, okay, you should come to Mongolia. And the fourth Dalai Lama was born in Mongolia. Right? So it's a relationship between teacher and disciple. Simple as that. That's how it continued. That's how it should continue. The Chinese government has no role whatsoever. Now, what the Chinese government do is that they bring this 1793 Qing Dynasty 29-point ordinance. They say, hey, as per this ordinance, Article 1 was about reincarnation, and they use golden urn. They put 3 names, they shake it, pick one guy, and he is the Dalai Lama. So that's their claim. Okay. The problem with that claim is 29-point ordinance does not exist. The original copy in Chinese is nowhere to be seen. Copy of the 29-point ordinance in Chinese, nowhere to be seen. Okay. Now, original Tibetan copy is not there. Copy of the Tibetan, ordinance is not there. So, and what do they have is an Amman office. There's a Chinese embassy in Tibet. And staff member took a note. That's all they have. Oh, there's a noting that says that there was this law. It was implemented. Right? Now, we all know Chinese dynastic system. They are very good at keeping records. But all the Chinese emperors are obsessed with the legacy. That they have this archival office. When you are alive, each time you die, the next emperor makes sure the previous emperor's record is kept. The Qing dynasty, the latest, the newest dynasty, which is supposed to have the most comprehensive record of the dynasty. Now, the 1793 29-point ordinance is ordinance issued by an emperor for the whole of Tibet, for the governance of Tibet. Such an important document doesn't exist. So it's a very original copy. That's what we're saying. It doesn't exist. And number 2, golden urn, they claim, has been used to select Dalai Lamas. Right? Now, we claim maybe on 12 Dalai Lama it must have been used. Other than that, it has not been used at all. Now, for the sake of argument, 1793, 29-point ordinance, Article 1 says reincarnation should be chosen based on golden urn. Post 1793, the first Dalai Lama, after the ordinance was issued, is 9th Dalai Lama, 1809. Now 10th Dalai Lama, 11th Dalai Lama, 12th Dalai Lama, all post 1793, right? Now, interestingly, 9th Dalai Lama dies, I think, at the age of 9. 10th Dalai Lama dies at the age of 11, I think. 12th Dalai Lama dies at the age of 21. And the 11th Dalai Lama dies at the age of 21. And the 12th Dalai Lama dies at the age of 16 or 18, something like that. So if the golden urn was used, that's a bad omen. When you use the golden urn, all the Dalai Lamas died young. So it should not be used. Right? Now, so why would you use a golden urn when they die young? Now, actually, historians say that these Dalai Lamas were murdered. Because the Chinese Ammans was there. They didn't, once Dalai Lama takes the position, official position, when he's enthroned, he is sovereign in himself. His word is more important and abiding than any laws or regulations that you have. I mean, you are sovereign, right? So they don't want to see the sovereign head maturing and taking power, so they get rid of it. So if golden urn was used, this Dalai Lama was selected, why were they murdered? There's a contradiction, right? So that's the only claim they have. And then, if you look at Chinese government's track record, from 1959 to almost 1990, no reincarnated lamas were recognized by the Chinese government. It was banned. All of a sudden in 1990, when Dalai Lama got Nobel Peace Prize, hey, Dalai Lama is becoming popular. Maybe we need a law. And Panchen Lama dies in 89, 90, right? Or we need a law, a procedure in place to recognize reincarnated lama. That's how they bring this laws, 1995 law. And then in 2007, they bring another law called Order Number 5. All the laws were invented to suit their political need, then passing and making laws to bring justice and basic right to Tibetans or reincarnated lama. So there's a lot of contradiction, right? So that's the argument I try to make in the article before I press. Now, the Holiness himself has said whether we can create or not. Yes. So he said next Dalai Lama could come in the form of reincarnation. That means continue the present system, which is when Dalai Lama dies, a few years, young boy is born, and search party goes searches and finds the boy, and the selection, now they'll find several boys generally, and then they'll select 3 out of which one will be chosen, right? That's the reincarnation process. Now, he has also proposed a selection process, like cardinals meeting and selecting the Pope. All the high lamas meet and select the next Dalai Lama, which is unconventional, not likely, but aspirational. Now, the third option is much talked about, is the emanation. while his son Dalai Lama is alive, he could designate his successor, a 10-year-old boy, and say he will succeed me. Now this is much talked about because given the reality that the Chinese government might choose their Dalai Lama, so it is better for this Dalai Lama to choose his own successor now and then groom him and educate him. And then, he'll be, if his son Dalai Lama goes on to live for 130 years, he'll be in his 20s or 30s. And then, we will be far ahead because Chinese government, they have to go back to reincarnation process that come with infant, So logically, emanation makes sense. So this is the debate that's going on. So he has proposed all three in 2011 statement.
Excellent. So that's a kind of a retrospective discussion, thinking back to the use of history, the attempts to legitimize different approaches to a political institution. And I think it's a really valuable discussion and speaks to the continuing relevance of the past to the present. But I'll ask one more question and I'll open the floor up. And that the foreign affairs piece ended with you pretty bluntly saying that silence is complicity or complicit.
Yes.
And given that tomorrow, Biden and Xi will be meeting on the sidelines of the APEC summit, and that when you were in office, through your persistence, you were able to make your voice heard in Washington, even getting into the State Department and the White House of the former president. I'm curious now, if you were, I don't know if Biden's on the plane tonight or tomorrow morning or what, but if you could get a word in, advising him how to maybe not even just approach Tibet, but approach the US-China relationship and what's at stake here. I think a lot of us are hoping that this meeting will dampen tensions. Things have been perilous over the past year. I don't think a war between the US and China would benefit anyone. If a war was to occur, it would be over Taiwan, not over Tibet. But it's a difficult sort of balancing act, I think. And so you have this experience, you have an understanding of the track record. And I don't have a phone to the president, but I know people who know people, maybe. So what would you...
I can say telepathically. Right? I must have some power of an oracle too.
But seriously, I think this is a really, I'm really curious. I think it's a question that a lot of us who've worked on China and working with Asian security issues have struggled with for many, many years. And from the perspective of a country that has dealt with China in very difficult terms for quite some time, what would you advise?
I might have a contrary view that, in a sense, people say, oh, it's a difficult relationship in China and America now. It's difficult mainly because Chinese government is not getting what they want from America, right? For the last 30 years, they got what they wanted, from WTO, membership, you just name it, count. They just went through the list. Anything Chinese government wanted, right? They got it. They want FDI, foreign direct investment, from $10 billion to $100 billion a year in China. Who invested? Mainly America and Western countries, right? And any know-how technology you want, right? From from solar panel to nuclear, power to airplane to, we all know Boeing went there and made their, airplane there. That's why now China is making airplanes as well. So if you look at the progress the Chinese government of China has made, is primarily based on both the capital and the resources and know-how and technology work from this side. So and then in return, what do the Chinese government give back? Nothing. Did it change basic human rights of Chinese people? Let's not talk about Tibetans, okay? Did they improve the human rights of Chinese people? Did they open up? There was did they improve the legal system? Did they bring any sort of democracy, even at the village level?
But I would just interrupt. I would say for a while.
No, that's what I'm saying.
For a while, they did.
No, now, why I say this is because when you're getting so much from one side, when you ask, give us something in return, they give you a little bit. And for example, President Jimmy Carter, right? He used to attend a village election. This could be a beginning of democracy, right? Where essentially, Communist Party said, okay, we will give 2 candidates for villages to vote, but then the nomination are from Chinese Communist Party, okay? But then people voted. That's prospective democracy, And China had like 999,000 villages, okay? So they have 3 model villages, and that's the report they wrote. There was no big... Now, this kind of concession they got, and this was much written about. But there was no indication that this will lead to real democracy at all. So now, you said difficult, is mainly because Chinese government is not getting what they want, semiconductor, essentially, right? High tech. These are banned, prevented, not just from America, also from Netherlands and allies, right? So China wants this, and they're coming to San Francisco to say, hey, right? There are like at least 1,000 American companies in Shanghai doing business. Not much is affected, okay? Business is going on back and forth. They are making profits, but this high-end technology is banned. That's what they want, and that's what they're here. So the choice you have is, America has prevented 1% of, if you scale it, 1% of the business. 99% is going on as it was before, except the Chinese government is raiding American companies raiding American, business people, right? And they are preventing American companies from coming into China. That is going on. Other than that, what American business, group is asking is, open the market, we want to go there, still invest. It's the Chinese government who is preventing, right? Only prevention from American side is just 1%. So that's why Xi Jinping is in California. But, hey, don't prevent that, give us that, it hurt them, right? And that's why this is difficult, right? I don't think so, because for 30 years, Western countries, especially America, gave everything China needed, everything. And then, we could say it was, at that time, it was difficult for us, as I said, it was engagement, and it was difficult for human rights, for democracy, even for rule of law. But if there's,
to just be direct.
Yes.
So would a war between the United States and China benefit the Tibetan people, or not?
War will not benefit anybody. And then we are Buddhists, we advocate nonviolence. Even if there's a war, Tibetans will say we advocate nonviolence, because even for our own freedom struggle, we advocate nonviolence, right? For the whole world, we want to see nonviolence. This all is for compassion, kindness. We want to see that. Having said that, now you are an international relations guy. Now in the discourse international relations, with the famous book Thucydides' Trap, right? Inevitable war. These are written by experts, right? So it's a fact in the last 2,000 years, out of 16 times when there were great power struggles, right? 12 out of 16 times it was decided through war. So that means 75% chance there will be war, because China has declared they want to be number one by 2049, and Xi Jinping wants to be at par with Mao or beyond, right? It's a fact. America is number one. So in 2,000 years of history, when there is number one and when there's number two claiming to be number one, 75% of the time it was decided through war. So 75% is a very high percentage.
25% is 1 in 4, though.
War.
With not having war.
That's true. But if you have to...
Probably that's better.
No, 25% is better. I'm not saying it's not better. Now if I there's a stock or anything, if I have to invest and say, hey, you have 75% chance of making profit or 25% chance of making profit, which stock will you bet on? 75%, hands down, right? Hands down. So I'm not I want it. Yeah. But this seems to be a fact, right? In the last 2,000 years. And now, if China says, you know what, I have potential to become number one, but I don't want to, right? That is a different matter. I will show you the trajectory where I'll go to opposite direction or maintain the same. That's not Xi Jinping is saying. Xi Jinping says, I want to be number one by 2049. That's how I think, And then, he has made declarations after declaration for war, telling generals just 2 days ago, ready, be prepared for war. All the generals, ready to fight. He has said it time and again, okay? So what we're based on their language, their goal. So it's inevitable. And we don't want to see what's happening in Ukraine, small scale. What's happening in Israel is a small scale. If there's a war, it's bad for everybody. But unfortunately, there's a 75% chance.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people, I'll open up to the floor in just a second. There are some people in the room who probably would disagree with Graham Allison's interpretation of the Thucydides trap and how it applies to the current situation. And I think actually then what's more pertinent, if I may, is your observation of what she has said publicly and privately. And then I would encourage everyone, there was a pretty remarkable piece in the Times yesterday by Chris Buckley, where he looks at Xi's public statements and some of his internal statements over the years, where it's quite clear, actually, from these statements, how he views the world. And the rest of it is more window dressing. And so I think that is maybe more relevant than extending historical examples, largely from other parts of the world, into the Asian security situation.
Now, let's take your argument and say, let's say 25% prevails. There will be no war. Good news. But China wants to be number one. So America has to give in. So the goal to be number one is there. So now you have to visualize, do you want to continue with the present world order or the Chinese world order? So let's say there's no war. Then the number one should give up or give in to number two. Like Great Britain gave up and said, okay, if America wants to be number one, we'll focus on Europe, we'll try to deal with Germany and Russia at that time. We'd see America great, let it be. So that's how you give up or give in. So America has to give up and give in. If America is giving up, then it's true that China will rise. They want to be number one. Now then you have to live with the Chinese world order. And then now, is there a vision of Chinese world order? Yeah, Xi Jinping has come on. We have a Chinese military order, Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, Chinese, all the visions you want for world order. Again, Xi Jinping has, Xi Jinping taught. It's enshrined in the constitution. It's mandated in schools and colleges now. It is taught even to American company staff. They have to go through half an hour, 1 hour session every month. It's a fact in China, right? It's a fact. So I don't say Biden's thought, there's not even a leaf letter of Biden's thought.
There's not even Trump's thought.
No, that's true. So it's a fact now. Again, we can't. So yes, there is no war, which is a good news. Now you have to give in and you have to live with Chinese world order. And what is Chinese world order? Imperial system. Autocratic emperor. That's a fact. That's again 2,000 years of Chinese history now. China has not deviated much. So in 30 years, we invested thinking we can democratize China. That I would say is very courageous, but also naive, because you're betting against 2,000 years of history.
They might even say 5,000.
5,000 years of history. Then the odds is against you. That's like 0.05%, time you're investing. So, these are discussions we must have. And are you willing to live with it, right? I don't want to, when I in India, I also try to scare India, not deliberately, but how do you become number one? For America to become number one, they must get rid of number two. Make sure that Canada and Mexico are nowhere near number two, right? Because when number one goes to the world, if there's a war, you fight, and then number two might take over, right? So America makes sure there's no number two. Now in Asia, who is number two potentially? India, Japan. So again, China should make sure that there is no number two challenger, because when there is a conflict between America and China, they have to make sure in Asia the number two will take over, right? To remain neutral and then take over. So they have to get rid of it. So if you analyze all these things. And it's a scary world. Again, I'm not an international relations expert per se, but I have a very common sense. As a Tibetan, very common sense is, it looks like if you look at First World War, all the wars, right? What happens is that first you become rich with all the colonies, right? Industrialization, you become rich, you have all the colonies, and then you say, hey, I have to protect my wealth. You buy arms and build arms, and then you fight. And in Arab world, 40 years ago, they discovered oil. They got all the wealth, and they say, hey, I must protect my oil, wealth, and they bought all the arms. That's why there's conflict in business. Now, which continent has the highest economy, fastest economic growth? Asia. Which continent has the fastest, arms buying, arms race? Asia. So it's the same trajectory, You get money, you get rich, you buy guns, you fight. You get rich, you buy guns, you fight. And Asia, all the trends, largest arm manufacturers, largest arm buying, arm race is going on Asia. And you have all the money, they all are buying guns. And once you buy guns, you use it, because more guns you have, more army you have, more generals you have, and by profession, by design, by their habits, you want to fight. So that's a very Buddhist simplistic explanation.
I think the better Buddhist explanation, and then I will open the floor, might be that this talk is finite, but samsara within its own bounds is almost infinite. So luckily, there's a very long delay, and whatever happens tomorrow in San Francisco is a tiny 0.0001%.
That's why Tibetans are paranoid optimistic. We say, but there's a dictator, no, he will die too. We all die. We all die, right? So these bad guys will all die, and good guys will come. So don't worry about it. Okay, in the long run, good guys will win. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Why don't we give a quick comment? You can take questions yourself.
Start this way.
Hi, I'm PhD student here. Thank you very much for giving the talk. I'm Chinese. I was a journalist in Beijing a while ago, and I heard this story. I want to ask if this is accurate. So it seems to be that in the 80s and 90s, there seems to be at least some voice within the party that's urging for reconciliation with the Dalai Lama. But gradually, it seems like it's either liberal party members or older generation of these people getting out of quiet or they die. I just wonder your general impression about whether that's accurate, and do you think is there still kind of this liberal voice within the party that's urging this thing, or because the other story that I heard, I don't know what's true, is that these hawks, they have more incentives to create enemy, and I just wonder generally your thought about your dialogues with the Chinese government over the years and how they change over time, and whether you see different opinions within the party.
It's a fact that there was a liberal wing in China. In fact, led by Deng Xiaoping initially. He said, other than independence, anything can be discussed. He told his elder brother, Gyaltsen came to Dharmshala, told his holiness, I met Deng Xiaoping, his other independence, anything can be discussed. Then Dalai Lama sent his representatives. So series of meetings took place in 80s. Unfortunately, liberal Hu Yabang was there. And he was very much for that. He really wanted to have that. He visited Tibet himself and he said, where did all the money that Beijing sent disappear? Did it go to all the rivers, And South Asian too, liberal-minded, right? Unfortunately, Hu Yabang lost power, partly because he was liberal in general, also in Tibet, right? And then South Asian also later, right? So, including actually Xi Jinping's father, Xi Rongshun, was in the liberal camp, because when Panchen Lama died, he wrote the official obituary, right? Then the son didn't turn out to be like his father so far, So it's a fact. Now, how it works is that the central government essentially outsourced the governance of Tibet to the local authority, mainly the United Front. So you govern it, you do what you want, maintain stability, and then we will look other way. Maintain security, stability internally, and security at the frontiers, then they look other way. So there's lots of discussion. All the minerals, you just name it, uranium, gold, all are mined. It's essentially a contract between United Front officials and Chinese business people. So it doesn't benefit local people, and not much taxes paid to the local government, also to the central government, right? So that's how you do what you want, maintain stability. As long as you maintain stability, any kind of corruption is allowed. So that's so much of exploration is taking place in Tibet. Some, maybe even central government, they don't know and they don't want to. So now United Front doesn't have any interest whatsoever to solve the issue of Tibet because you're going to make yourself jobless. So why would you address the issue which will make you jobless? Because they lose power, they lose income, they lose resources, right? So yes, and then in the frontier, military has lots of say. So sometimes they do say there's a disagreement between military and United Front as well, right? So as long as you maintain, so that's the contract. So it's as repressive as you can be, it's okay for the central government. So that's the system in Tibet and Xinjiang, in Mongolia, is very different from Han Chinese. Now, maybe all over China, it's what was in Tibet is also becoming, it's being tested by Han Chinese as well. But it's a fact. Now that liberal wing, I think has disappeared since Huyaba. So there might be small group of intellectuals feel like that, mainly dissidents and Democrats who advocate that. Yes.
Thank you, sir, for your talk today. My name is George. I'm a senior study government here. My question is, how should the United States best oppose Xi Jinping's plan for hegemony while still avoiding any sort of armed conflict?
No, again, I would argue that actually America, given a choice, Western countries, they will not enter into deliberately provoke a war. I think it's mainly what would you do if Chinese army let's say invades or attack or blockade Taiwan? What will the reaction be? Right? So even tomorrow when they meet, engage but verify. So last 30 years, what happened? There was engagement, no verification. Or we told them you must open up, and then there was no verification at all. And it's we have elections at the village level, right? And then after two rounds of election, it shut down. There's a classic photograph of former President Jimmy Carter. He used to visit Beijing. And initial meetings, he used to meet with presidents and prime ministers of China. Jiang Zemin, Hu Jin, they just name it all that, right? And after all this, the local elections were shut down. And the last trip of Jimmy Carter, you just do that, okay? In the front of the People's Daily, the People's Congress building, he's with mid-level staff. So because former President Jimmy Carter, well-intended, very good motivation, okay? And I know people in Carter Center, they meant it well. But his usage was done. And then his protocol was reduced to a mid-level staff. As long as you bring good press, you get that treatment. But once they abandon you, that's all. Same thing, I'm not saying with Alan, but any China experts, sinologists, right? All of them used to go. Journalists, everybody, right? And then their access are denied. If you just scale it, who are the ones whose access are denied? Those who speak more objectively. Then objectivity is reduced to whether you support us or not. Now, even now, majority of the China experts are denied entry into China, or they don't want to go into China. They don't want to.
Yeah, that's fair.
Partly because they have made it redundant, right? You go inside, you don't get data. You don't get access. You don't get interviews. Now, only few sinologists are running around. They still believe in engagement, but engagement for the sake of engagement. Because had America or West, they have verified all those things, and we give you this. Let's see what we get in return. The classic example is Olympics of 2008. A lot of people, including Tibetans, protested. Don't give Olympics to Chinese government. And then IOC also intervened and negotiated and said, during and after the Olympics, human rights in China, will be improved. That was the promise made by Chinese government. Olympics happened, shut down. No improvements in human rights, no verification. No one went and said, hey, IOC, are you verifying this? American government, are you verifying this? This is a written promise made by Chinese government. No one did. And they just, look. And then IOC went and gave it the Olympics anyways. So lack of verification, make them, immune. And they just think they can get away with it.
Yeah. Thank you for your remarks today, Madam Charles. I have a question. First, I recall the news from July. Later from Dalai Lama, he said some Chinese government, maybe formally or informally, are trying to contact him. And I'm curious if this tunnel connection has been built or will be built in the near future. And if this tunnel is built, what will be the priority to be communicated? And the second, I remember in 2015, leaving Buddha back to Nepal from Dharmshala. I don't know if he's in English or Spanish, but I think you know who it is. And
where you went?
Nagala. Okay.
Say that one more time.
His name is Andrew. So I don't know.
No, which place in China did he go to?
I think he's Sichuan.
From exile?
Yeah.
From Dharmshala?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
At least the propaganda in China describes so. And now he was given the lullaby in Nadi France as the place, like from Dharmshala, someone like back to China, and also some interviews describe how grateful he was like the Chinese government. So what's the attitude from Dharmshala? Like I think he maybe not the only one who like go back to China or Tibet. So what's the attitude from Dharmshala side? Because I also think like in 2014, some interview to Dalai Lama, he said he's open to talk with the Chinese government about back to Tibet or even China. So I'm also curious like for what reason like that negotiation just didn't get what he expected.
Yes. His Holiness Dalai Lama often says that he keeps meeting Chinese from China. And some people who having connections or claiming to have connections, quite cheap, with Chinese officials come to meet with him, and they do. When I've been there for 10 years, right? So initially I also met a few of them, so claiming to have contacts, in China and all that. But then whether they come to, kind of study you or come to collect information, or whether you really want to engage in dialogue or not, still is a question mark. They come once a year, meet, what's going on, what's going on, and then they go back, and that's all it is. So far, nothing concrete has happened. Now, as far as His Holiness is concerned, he's always open, right? He anyone can come and meet with him, including Chinese from China, anyone. Yeah, you meet him, yeah, he says so. It is a fact. But then when I was there for the last 10 years, did I see any potential? Did I see any potential of breakthrough in all those meetings? No. And after some time, I said, look, unless you have something concrete, please don't come and meet with me. I just come and talk to you, and then you say, I'll write a good report for you. As I said, I have a track record of being pro-dialogue. Okay, I have engaged in dialogue in my own capacity. But then they just come once a year, and then they go back and report, and nothing concrete happened. So I really don't see this informal contacts leading anywhere, unless it happens. Okay, I want to prove wrong. Now, I don't know which Lama you're talking about, going back. Yes, few Lamas are allowed to go back. The visas is very restricted, it's conditional, and even if you go back, you're right. On Chinese TV and news media, they are quoted praising the Chinese government. But often, you don't hear them saying it verbally, okay? So once you get a visa, what the quotation in newspaper, and whether you actually said it or not, they just put it out there, And then, yes, I'm sure there are some Lamas who, once you go there, you have to praise the Chinese government, And if you don't do that, you will be denied visa next time. So it's a quid pro quo.
What about the monks and lamas in China? Many of whom have followers with the Han Chinese population, yes, right? Yes. Where does that population fit?
Sadly, yeah, there are some very prominent lamas, hundreds of thousands of followers inside China. Unfortunately, from what I hear, is many centers inside China of Tibetan lamas are shutting down. The access is now increasingly limited. So it again is becoming a challenge. At one time, there was a window where high lamas could go all over China, and there are huge centers, give teachings, and you see hundreds of thousands of people, right? And a few lamas managed to come to America as well and travel to Europe also. There was this window. Even a few Tibetan singers used to come and sing and entertain us and go back. That all these windows is being shut down. But interestingly, recently in Nava area, right, in Gansu, one Tibetan Lama gave a teaching. So some estimate anywhere from 300,000 to 1 million people. There's a YouTube video. You just watch this like a huge number of people. So he gave a teaching, I think
mostly Chinese.
Generally Tibetans.
The audience?
Yeah. Mainly Tibetans. But can you imagine around, if you look at the YouTube, at least 300,000-400,000 people, if not, some estimate as high as 1 million people, I don't know. But at least, can you imagine one place? On their own, they brought their own tents. I mean, you don't have accommodation for 300,000-400,000 people, right, in the mountain. So can you imagine? So, in a way, so Tibetans are very devout Buddhist, but also it is becoming an expression of your identity, assertion of your identity. So it is becoming, but unfortunately, once they come to know about it, it's very unlikely it will happen next time.
And to take another question, I would follow up though on Charles' question or point in terms of like the interaction. When Pema Tse passed away so unexpectedly, actually a great outpouring of support from Han Chinese, mostly younger monks, and kind of praising his artistic innovation and integrity.
He's famous, at least in the Tibetan world, famous movie maker, and his movies were shown all over the world, including in China. And he died unexpectedly. And not just that, I mean, there was guy, or he did PhD from Harvard, younger, great expert in medicine. He also died unexpectedly. And there's another guy who also came to Harvard, did his visiting student. People I know in their 40s, huh?
Don't invite me.
And then all dying, you know, recently, just in the last 18 months, I was, you know, first curious, then I became quite suspicious. These people, Tibetans, were young, dynamic, highly educated, you know, public intellectuals, suddenly, you know, dying. Yeah, this direct people saying also is like, wow, you know. So I don't know, again, you know.
Didn't mean to interrupt. I think Magnus had a question.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm curious what you think about the program we are reading about, which raised alarm also at the UN about the forced education of Tibetan children in large numbers. How do you see this campaign? Why is it being expanded now? And what will come of this in the future?
Did you also mention UN?
I mean to say that there were people at the UN who...
That's true, yes. Yeah, there's a report that around approximately 1 million Tibetan children are forced to send their, of course, to boarding schools from rural areas because Tibet is still 80% rural, nomadic, and farmers, right? So in urban settings, Chinese system can penetration, surveillance, and control can happen. But rural, because they're so remote, it's difficult to have access. So now to force parents to send their children to start boarding school in urban areas where they can be controlled and indoctrinated, right? So obviously, and then, you know, discourage Tibetan language, discourage Tibetan faith, thereby dilute their identity. It's part of the program to synthesization of, you know, the next generation of Tibetans. And that even UN experts express their concern and say, my goodness, million children, we have only 6 million Tibetans, right? So if you take million children and educate them, that's like, you know, assimilating, the next generation. I mean, you know, essentially the Chinese government goal is to make Tibet into a Chinese province, Chinese, and make Tibetans into Chinese, right? I mean, that's their assimilation has been, and this is not just a new recent development. This is like a centuries old imperial, you know, mission, expand the empire and assimilate, you know, people in the frontiers.
We probably have time for one more question. I don't know if there's any,
Okay, so Jason, thank you very much for today's great presentation. So my question is about my reading of the Charter of Tibetans in Exile, and I noticed that Article 7, Abjuration of War, shares a remarkably similarity with the Japan's Constitution, Article 9, about renouncing the
violence and
violences. So I'm curious. So I divide my question in like groups. So firstly, is this part of the Article 7 inspiration, maybe like some form of borrowing from the concept in Japanese Constitution, or is it originated in Buddhism? And secondly, I was wondering about the claim of non-violence, and what's your interpretation of non-violence in relation to like self-defense and a possible Tibetan self-defense force? And thirdly, if in the future, I don't know, not distant future, Tibetan country established a constitution of democracy one, so the new constitution should it like based on the Article 7, or like what should the Article 7 be like in the future? Like Japan just passed the law in 2015, so it allows for the collateral self-defense rights. So it allows when like China invades Taiwan, so Japan can come and join US protecting Taiwan. So what will the best as a nation? So what will this stand from Article 7?
Yeah, I have given a lot of talks. Actually, I'm meeting someone who actually led to Tibetan Charter of government exile and voting Article 7, renunciation of violence. Right. This is actually a Buddhist-based idea. Buddha's time all the way. Renunciation of violence is part of Buddhism. Right now, in certain localities, in certain countries, there might be different reality. So based on that, that's how the article came. Now, not directly with Japan. And I, when I was thinking I used to travel to Japan every year. And then Shinzo Abe was my host. And then we have the largest parliamentary group in the world which support Tibet, right? It's in Japan. So 109 parliamentarians in Japan, composed of all the parties except for the Communist Party of Japan. All the members are there. So it's like not just bipartisan, it's like a multi-party system. Now, yes, under international law, coming from law background, okay, right to self-defense. Yeah. So it's not violence. But then we go by Buddhist interpretation. Buddhist interpretation, violence, non-violence is as long as you don't harm others, that's not violence. You harm others is violence. Doesn't matter the act itself is violence. Now, again, Buddhism also goes by, now there's extreme interpretation. It all depends on your motivation and intention. So in exceptional cases, right, that if your motivation is pure and your act can be violent, but it won't be violence. That's like, the example is Buddha. We believe that he went through 100 lives, okay? One of the lives, he saw this tigress with, puppies who were very hungry. So he slices himself and sacrifices himself to save the puppies, right? So in a boat, there's a bandit who's going to slaughter all the people in the boat, and he telepathically sees that and he gets rid of the bandit. So this kind of exceptions are there, but still it won't be like a self-defense, right? Self-defense is one person comes to harm you, you defend yourself. So in that definition, that self-defense won't be allowed. Now, if Tibet becomes, like you said, a country and have our own democratic constitution, as of today, that provision will continue. Having said that, it is for Tibetans in Tibet to decide what kind of constitution they want, whether they want democracy system or not. Another thing about, as I was explaining as the Prime Minister, President of Government Exile, our goals of Government Exile is not to replicate or take over Tibet and bring the government back in Tibet. In 1993, Dalai Lama has made it very clear. Solis made it very clear. The day the Tibet issue is resolved, Tibetan government will cease to exist. And then we go back as individuals. So when I ran for election, when I won election, my ambition was never to be Prime Minister of Tibet. My ambition was to serve 6 million Tibetans in Tibet, be their spokesperson. And when they gain genuine autonomy or freedom, my rule ceases. So this is also a very Buddhistic mindset. Others before self is a service. Right? Yeah.
Wonderful. We're a little bit over time, so why don't we get on? And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good.